Right, so let's look at the vNetworking, especially in the virtual switch. Okay, so we can look at our node here. So you can see here that we have two virtual switches, vSwitch 0 and vSwitch 1. And on this host there are 4 VMs running. So we can see here that we have the 4 VMs connecting to one side of the virtual switch, and the router here is connected on one side of the virtual switch and is connected on to the other side. So the router here is used as a firewall between the external network, which is the vSwitch 0, which is connecting to a 1 gigabit link there, and then that connects to an internal network called student network here. So in this way all the traffic between the external network and the inside network goes through the router VM. On this VM we set up a firewall. So we can see here that there is one physical adapter on each switch. So the VM NIC 0 will connect to the outside network onto the switch that takes us on to the internet, and then VM NIC 1 connects us to the internal network. So these are our physical adapters that we can see here, VM NIC 0 and VM NIC 1. Over on this side we have the service, the port group connection type, which is in this case Napier Physical Network, Management Network and Student Network. And then we have the service console IP. In this case we can see here that VMK0 is 146.176.166.66. Okay, so we have different connection types. So these can be service console, VM kernel or virtual machine. So we can see here we have two virtual machine port groups, the upper one and the lower one here, and then we have a VM kernel port. So the VM kernel port is where we actually configure the technologies such as vMotion, iSCSI, NAS and NFS, and we need to set up an IP address for this to actually work. The virtual machine port group is actually used by the VMs to communicate with the physical network or between the actual switch. When we actually create our virtual switch, we're given the choice between whether it's a virtual machine or a VM kernel. So we can see here the VM kernel handles the traffic for vMotion, iSCSI, NFS and host management, where the virtual machine connection types is used for a connection between the VMs. Okay, so we could use an existing switch, or we'll create a new switch. And we can create VLANs if we want, give them a number. Okay, so it's added the switch network here. So just now we actually have all our physical adapters connected, so we can actually connect onto the virtual switch just now. But if we had, then we could connect to any of the hardware devices that we want. Okay, so here are some of the properties. So there's the properties of the network interface here, and we can see it's 100 megabits per second on the internal switch network. It can have up to 120 ports. And let's just remove the switch that we've created. Okay, so let's actually look at the cluster itself. So we can see there are 3 machines in the cluster, and these are grouped together through our lab manager cluster. So let's now look at the basic configuration. Okay, we select networking. So we can see here it is reflected through that we have our main management network here, and here is the internal part of the network. This is the inside network. So we can see that student network here and student networks 2LM11 is connected onto the same virtual switch. So we can see these VMs are actually started up, where these two aren't. And we can also see that we can have fence networks where there is no adapters onto the external network. In this way we can keep them isolated from the outside. So as remember, we have a router running on the main cluster manager, which is connecting to the outside network, and there is a VM between this switch and the other virtual switch. And this way we can actually firewall to the outside. Okay, so we can look at each of the cluster nodes. We can see there that we also have machines running on this network and on this machine here.